The chipped mug warmed my hands, the lukewarm tea inside doing little to soothe the knot tightening in my stomach. Rain lashed against the window pane, mimicking the storm brewing inside me. It was a Tuesday, unremarkable in every way except for the gnawing unease that had taken root over the past few weeks. A feeling as persistent and irritating as a low hum. Mark was late. Again. He'd been working late a lot lately. Crunch time at the office, he'd said, with a weary sigh and a kiss that tasted faintly of something floral. Lily of the valley, maybe. Clara's favorite. Ridiculous thought. My sister Clara would she? We were close, inseparable since childhood, bound by a shared history, a secret language of glances and inside jokes. She was my rock, my confidant, the one person in the world I trusted implicitly. And Mark was everything I thought I wanted. Kind, funny, intelligent, with eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. We'd been together for 2 years. A solid, comfortable 2 years filled with movie nights, weekend hikes, and quiet evenings spent just being together. There were no grand pronouncements of undying love, no dramatic gestures, but a steady, reassuring warmth that I'd mistaken for contentment. Now, that warmth felt more like lukewarm water, tepid and unsettling. The floral scent, the late nights, the way Mark's eyes seemed to slide away from mine when I asked about work, the hushed phone calls he took in the other room. Each small detail, insignificant on its own, now coalesced into a monstrous shape of suspicion. I dismissed it, of course. Paranoia, insecurity. It was my own anxieties whispering in my ear, twisting innocent occurrences into something sinister. Clara was my sister. Mark was my boyfriend. There was no room for suspicion, no space for doubt. And yet, the knot in my stomach refused to loosen. The rain intensified, drumming a frantic rhythm against the glass. I glanced at the clock. 8:47 p.m. He was almost an hour late. Crunch time, he'd said. But even crunch time had its limits, didn't it? I picked up my phone, scrolling through messages, anything to distract myself from the growing unease. A new notification popped up, a photo from Clara, sent just minutes ago. Drinks with the team, celebrating a successful launch. The photo showed Clara beaming, her arms slung around a group of colleagues, faces blurred and indistinct. Fun, I typed back, forcing a cheerful tone. But my eyes were drawn to the background of the photo, to a dimly lit corner of the bar, where two figures sat in hushed conversation, faces turned away from the camera. One was definitely Mark. The other, the angle was too oblique, the lighting too poor, but the silhouette, the way she leaned in, the cascade of dark hair, it looked like Clara. My blood ran cold. It had to be a coincidence, a trick of the light, my own paranoia playing tricks on me again. But the knot in my stomach tightened further, twisting into a sharp, agonizing pain. The floral scent, the late nights, the averted eyes, the hushed phone calls, and now, this photo. It was all adding up, painting a picture I didn't want to see, a truth I desperately wanted to deny. But the rain kept falling, relentless and unforgiving, and the storm inside me raged, threatening to break. I needed to know. I had to know. Even if it shattered everything. The photo burned in my mind, a digital snapshot of my worst fears taking shape. I zoomed in, pixelating the image, straining to make out details that weren't there. It could be anyone, really. Anyone with dark hair, anyone wearing a similar jacket, anyone with a vaguely familiar posture. My mind desperately searched for loopholes, for rational explanations, for any way to dismiss the mounting evidence. But deep down, A cold certainty was solidifying, a chilling premonition that refused to be ignored. I called Mark, my fingers trembling as I dialed his number. It rang and rang, finally going to voicemail. "Hey, it's Mark. Leave a message." His voice, so familiar, so reassuring, now sounded distant, almost foreign. I hung up without leaving a message, my heart pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. I called Clara next. Her phone rang twice before going to voicemail. "Hi, you've reached Clara. Leave a message." Her cheerful, bubbly voice, usually a source of comfort, now grated on my nerves. "Having fun with the team?" I muttered to the voicemail, my voice laced with sarcasm. "Celebrating the successful launch?" The silence on the other end was deafening. I slammed my phone onto the table, the plastic case cracking slightly from the impact. Rage, hot and visceral, surged through me, eclipsing the fear and doubt. How dare they? How dare they lie to me, betray me behind my back, with each other? The thought was sickening, repulsive. My sister, my boyfriend, the two people I trusted most in the world, entangled in a web of deceit. It was beyond comprehension, a cruel joke played at my expense. But it wasn't a joke. It was real. The floral scent, the late nights, the averted eyes, the hushed phone calls, the photo. It was all real. And I was the fool, the oblivious idiot, the last to know. Tears welled up in my eyes, hot and angry, blurring my vision. I wiped them away with the back of my hand, refusing to succumb to despair. I wouldn't cry. I wouldn't break down. I would find out the truth. And then they would pay. A plan began to form in my mind. A cold, calculated strategy fueled by anger and betrayal. Clara's birthday was in 2 weeks. A big party. She'd been planning it for months. The whole family, all our friends, everyone would be there. It was the perfect stage, the perfect opportunity to expose them, to rip away their carefully constructed facade of innocence and reveal the ugly truth beneath. The thought sent a shiver of satisfaction down my spine. It wouldn't be pretty. It wouldn't be easy. But it would be justice. They had played me for a fool, but they had underestimated me. They had mistaken my kindness for weakness, my trust for naivete. They were wrong. Dead wrong. The rain outside had subsided, leaving a damp, heavy silence in its wake. But inside, the storm was just beginning to gather force, and I was ready to unleash it. I started to plan, meticulously, carefully, every detail accounted for. The birthday party was 2 weeks away, 2 weeks to prepare, 2 weeks to gather evidence, 2 weeks to steel myself for the inevitable confrontation, 2 weeks to become someone they wouldn't recognize, someone who wouldn't be played for a fool again, someone who would make them pay. The next 2 weeks were a blur of frantic activity and simmering rage, masked by a veneer of forced normalcy. I went through the motions of daily life, work, errands, social engagements, all the while consumed by my secret plan. I became an actress, playing the role of the unsuspecting girlfriend, the trusting sister, smiling and nodding. While inside, I was a coiled spring, ready to snap. I started subtly gathering evidence, small, seemingly insignificant details that would paint a damning picture. I checked Mark's phone records, casually when he left it unattended on the coffee table. Late-night calls to Clara's number, deleted text messages, the digital breadcrumbs of their deception. I scrolled through Clara's social media, searching for clues for any hint of their affair. A photo of Clara at a restaurant tagged by Mark with a cryptic caption, "Great company tonight." A comment from Clara on Mark's post, an overly familiar emoji, a suggestive innuendo. Each piece of evidence, no matter how small, fueled my anger, solidified my resolve. I even started following them discreetly after work, after team drinks, after family dinners. I became a shadow lurking in the periphery, observing their clandestine meetings, their hushed conversations, the stolen glances that spoke volumes. One evening, I followed them to a small, out-of-the-way Italian restaurant, the kind of place where couples went for romantic dinners, not siblings and boyfriends. I watched from across the street as they laughed, their heads close together, their hands brushing under the table. The sight of them together, so comfortable, so intimate, ignited a firestorm of jealousy and rage within me. I wanted to burst into the restaurant, to scream at them, to tear them apart. But I held back, remembering my plan. The birthday party. The perfect stage. The perfect moment. Patience, I told myself. Patience. Revenge was a dish best served cold, and I was going to serve it ice cold. I even started practicing my speech, rehearsing the words I would say, the accusations I would hurl, the truth I would reveal. I wanted it to be perfect, impactful, devastating. I wanted to see their faces when the truth came out, the shock, the shame, the humiliation. I imagined Clara's tears, Mark's stammering excuses, the stunned silence of the party guests. It was a dark fantasy, a morbid obsession, but it was the only thing that kept me going. The only thing that gave me a sense of control in a situation that felt completely out of control. I confided in no one, not even my closest friends. I couldn't risk anyone accidentally letting slip my plan, ruining the surprise. Besides, I wanted to savor this moment of righteous anger, this feeling of power, however fleeting it might be. It was my secret, my burden, my weapon, and I would wield it with precision and ruthlessness. The days ticked by, each one bringing me closer to the birthday party, closer to my moment of reckoning. The knot in my stomach was still there, tighter than ever, but now it was intertwined with a sense of anticipation, a grim satisfaction. I was no longer just hurt and betrayed. I was determined to expose them, determined to make them pay, determined to reclaim my dignity and self-respect. The rain had stopped, the clouds had parted, and a sliver of moonlight peeked through the darkness. But inside, the storm was still brewing, gathering strength, waiting to erupt, and I was ready to let it loose. Clara's birthday arrived, bright and sunny, a stark contrast to the darkness that had enveloped my life. The party was being held at her house, a sprawling suburban home with a large backyard, perfect for a summer celebration. Balloons bobbed in the gentle breeze, streamers fluttered from the trees, and the air was filled with the cheerful sounds of laughter and music. On the surface, it was a picture-perfect birthday party, a celebration of joy and happiness. But beneath the surface, a storm was brewing, a hidden drama about to unfold. I arrived fashionably late, dressed in a simple but elegant dress, my face carefully composed, my eyes betraying nothing of the turmoil within. I greeted Clara with a forced smile and a hug that felt stiff and unnatural. "Happy birthday," I said, my voice sounding hollow even to my own ears. "Thank you," Clara beamed, her eyes sparkling with genuine happiness. She looked radiant, beautiful, completely oblivious to the bomb I was about to drop. It was almost painful to see her so happy, knowing what I knew, knowing what I was about to do. but I pushed the guilt aside, reminding myself of their betrayal, their lies, their deceit. They deserved this. They deserved everything that was coming to them. Mark arrived shortly after, his usual charming smile plastered on his face. He kissed me lightly on the cheek, his eyes meeting mine for a fleeting moment. I saw a flicker of something in his eyes, a hint of nervousness, perhaps even guilt, but it was quickly masked by his practiced charm. "Happy birthday, Clara," he said, handing her a beautifully wrapped gift. "Thank you, Mark," Clara gushed, giving him a warm hug. The sight of them together, so casual, so comfortable, sent a jolt of anger through me. I clenched my fists, digging my nails into my palms, struggling to maintain my composure. The party was in full swing, guests mingling, drinks flowing, music playing. I circulated through the crowd, greeting friends and family, making small talk, all the while scanning the room, waiting for the right moment. I had decided to wait until everyone was gathered together, until Clara was about to make her birthday speech. The traditional moment of celebration and gratitude. That would be the perfect time. The most public, the most impactful, the most devastating. I saw Clara gathering everyone's attention, tapping on her glass with a spoon. "Okay, everyone, can I have your attention for a moment?" she said, her voice ringing out across the backyard. The music died down, conversations hushed, and all eyes turned towards Clara. This was it. My heart pounded in my chest, adrenaline surging through my veins. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I was about to do. Clara began her speech, thanking everyone for coming, expressing her gratitude for their love and support. Her voice was filled with emotion, her eyes shining with happiness. It was almost unbearable to watch. Almost. But I had come too far to back down now. This was my moment of truth, my moment of revenge. As Clara paused for breath, I stepped forward, my voice cutting through the silence. "Clara," I said, my voice clear and strong, surprisingly steady. All eyes turned to me, a ripple of confusion spreading through the crowd. Clara looked at me, her smile faltering slightly. "Anna, what is it?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. "I have a little birthday message for you too," I said, my voice hardening, my eyes locking onto hers. "A message about you and Mark." The air crackled with tension. The music was silent, the laughter gone, replaced by a palpable sense of unease. The storm was about to break. A hush fell over the party, broken only by the rustling of leaves in the trees and the distant chirping of birds. Every eye was on me. A mixture of curiosity, confusion, and apprehension etched on their faces. Clara's smile had vanished, replaced by a look of bewildered confusion. Mark stood frozen beside her, his face pale, his eyes wide with dawning horror. What are you talking about, Anna?" Clara stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm talking about you and Mark," I repeated, my voice ringing out across the silent backyard. "About your little secret, your little affair." The word hung in the air, heavy and accusatory. Gasps rippled through the crowd, whispers erupting like wildfire. Clara's face drained of color, her eyes widening in disbelief. That's not true," she choked out, her voice trembling. "It's a lie." "Is it?" I challenged, my voice sharp and cold. "Is it a lie that you've been meeting Mark behind my back? Is it a lie that you've been exchanging secret messages, hushed phone calls, stolen kisses?" I paused, letting my words sink in, letting the silence amplify their impact. "Is it a lie, Clara, that you've been sleeping with my boyfriend?" The question hung in the air, a brutal accusation. a public humiliation. Clara recoiled, as if I had slapped her, her hand flying to her mouth, tears welling up in her eyes. "No," she cried, her voice breaking. "It's not true. Anna, please. You're wrong." Mark finally found his voice, stepping forward, his face a mask of panic. "Anna, stop it. You don't know what you're saying." "Oh, I know exactly what I'm saying," I retorted, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "I know about the late nights, the floral scent, the secret dinners. I know about the photo, Clara. The photo you sent me, the one where you and Mark are huddled together in the corner of the bar." I pulled out my phone, scrolling through my photos, finding the incriminating image. I held it up for everyone to see, zooming in on the two figures in the background. "Take a good look, everyone," I said, my voice ringing with righteous anger. "See for yourselves. My sister Clara and my boyfriend Mark, caught in the act." A murmur went through the crowd, heads craning forward, whispers intensifying. Clara burst into tears, burying her face in her hands, her body shaking with sobs. Mark stood beside her, his face ashen, his eyes darting around the backyard, searching for an escape. "Anna, please. Let's talk about this later," he pleaded, his voice weak and desperate. "This isn't the time or the place." "Oh, I think it's exactly the time and the place," I countered, my voice hard and unforgiving. "What better time to reveal the truth than at your sister's birthday party? What better place to expose your betrayal than in front of all her friends and family?" I turned to the crowd, my voice rising in volume, fueled by anger and adrenaline. "Everyone, I want you to know the truth about Clara and Mark. They've been having an affair behind my back for weeks, maybe months. They've lied to me, betrayed me, humiliated me, and they thought they could get away with it." I paused, taking a deep breath, savoring the moment of revelation, the shock, the disbelief, the judgment in the eyes of the party guests. Well, they were wrong. I looked directly at Clara and Mark, my eyes burning with anger and contempt. They were so wrong. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by Clara's sobs and the frantic beating of my own heart. The storm had broken, and the aftermath was just beginning. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating, broken only by Clara's heartbroken sobs. She had collapsed onto a nearby patio chair, her face buried in her hands, her shoulders heaving. Mark stood beside her, frozen, his face a mask of shame and disbelief. The party guests were stunned, their faces a mixture of shock, embarrassment, and morbid curiosity. Some whispered amongst themselves, others stared at Clara and Mark with open condemnation, while a few looked at me with a mixture of pity and admiration. My parents rushed forward, their faces etched with concern and confusion. "Anna, what is going on?" my mother demanded, her voice trembling. "What are you saying about Clara and Mark?" "Mom, it's true," I said, my voice still strong but tinged with exhaustion. "They've been having an affair. I caught them. I have proof." My mother's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes widening in horror. My father stepped forward, his face grim. "Mark," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Is this true?" Mark stammered, avoiding my father's gaze. "Mr. Henderson, I can explain." "Explain what?" my father interrupted, his voice rising. "Explain why you've been betraying my daughter with her own sister. Explain why you've been lying to us all." Mark remained silent, his head bowed in shame. Clara finally looked up, her face streaked with tears, her eyes pleading. "Anna, please. It's not what you think," she sobbed, her voice choked with emotion. We didn't mean for it to happen. It just happened. It just happened? I repeated, my voice laced with sarcasm. Is that your excuse? It just happened that you started sleeping with my boyfriend. It just happened that you betrayed your own sister. Clara shook her head, tears streaming down her face. No, Anna, please, you don't understand, she cried. I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you. It was a mistake. A mistake? I scoffed. A mistake that you repeated over and over again. A mistake that you hid from me, lied to me about, for weeks. I turned to Mark, my eyes burning with anger. And you, Mark, I said, my voice dripping with contempt. I thought you were different. I thought you were better than this. But you're just like all the rest. Weak, selfish, and pathetic. Mark finally met my gaze, his eyes filled with remorse and regret. Anna, I am sorry, he said, his voice barely audible. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. I never meant for things to go this far. Never meant for things to go this far? I echoed, my voice rising again. You were sleeping with my sister, Mark. How much further did you think things were going to go? I felt a wave of nausea wash over me, the full weight of their betrayal crashing down upon me. I had exposed them. I had revealed the truth. I had gotten my revenge. But it didn't bring me the satisfaction I had expected. Instead, I felt empty, hollow, drained. The anger was still there, simmering beneath the surface, but it was mixed with a profound sense of sadness, of loss, of disillusionment. I had lost my boyfriend, yes, but I had also lost my sister, and that loss felt even more devastating. The party was effectively over. Guests began to drift away, murmuring apologies and awkward goodbyes. My parents tried to intervene, to mediate, to salvage the situation. But it was too late. The damage was done. The truth was out, and nothing would ever be the same again. The backyard emptied, the festive decorations now mocking reminders of the joyous occasion that had been so brutally shattered. Only my immediate family remained, huddled together in stunned silence. The wreckage of Clara's birthday party strewn around them like debris from a storm. Clara was still sobbing, her parents trying to comfort her, their faces a mixture of anger and disappointment. Mark stood alone, ostracized, a pariah in the midst of the family he had once been welcomed into. I watched them all, feeling strangely detached, as if I were observing a scene from a play, not living through my own personal tragedy. The adrenaline that had fueled my outburst had dissipated, leaving me feeling numb, emotionally exhausted. The anger was still there, a dull ache in my chest, but it was overshadowed by a profound sense of sadness and loss. I had wanted revenge. I had wanted to expose them. I had wanted to make them pay. And I had succeeded. But the victory felt hollow, bitter, unsatisfying. I hadn't expected to feel better. But I hadn't expected to feel this empty, this desolate. My mother approached me, her eyes filled with concern. Anna, are you all right? She asked, her voice soft and gentle. I don't know, Mom, I replied, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. I feel nothing. My mother wrapped her arms around me, pulling me into a tight embrace. I leaned into her, seeking comfort, but even her embrace felt distant, unable to penetrate the wall of numbness that had enveloped me. It's going to be okay, Anna, she whispered, stroking my hair. We'll get through this. We're here for you. I nodded, But I didn't believe her. I didn't see how things could ever be okay again. My relationship with Mark was over, irrevocably broken. My relationship with Clara was shattered, possibly beyond repair. My family was fractured, divided, caught in the crossfire of my pain and anger. And I was left standing in the ruins, surrounded by the debris of my shattered life, wondering what to do next. My father approached Mark, his face still grim, his voice low and menacing. "Mark, I want you to leave," he said, his words clipped and sharp. "And I don't want to see you anywhere near my daughters again. Do you understand?" Mark nodded meekly, his eyes downcast. "Yes, sir," he mumbled, his voice barely audible. He turned and walked away, disappearing through the gate, leaving me alone with the wreckage of my birthday party, the ruins of my relationships, the emptiness of my revenge. Clara looked up at me, her eyes red and swollen, her face a mask of misery. "Anna," she whispered, her voice trembling, "I'm so sorry." I looked at her, at my sister, my confidant, my best friend, now my betrayer, my rival, my enemy. And I saw not anger, not hatred, but a profound sense of sadness, of regret, of loss. We had been so close, so inseparable for so long. And now, we were strangers, divided by betrayal, separated by pain, perhaps forever. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the deserted backyard. The air grew cooler, the silence heavier, the emptiness deeper. The storm had broken, leaving behind a landscape of devastation, and I was left standing in the middle of it all, alone, lost, and utterly heartbroken. The birthday party was over, and so was everything else. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. The initial shock and raw pain of the betrayal gradually subsided, replaced by a dull ache, a lingering sadness, a quiet emptiness that permeated every aspect of my life. The birthday party exposure had been dramatic, cathartic, a moment of explosive confrontation. But the aftermath was quiet, insidious, a slow erosion of my spirit, my trust, my hope. My relationship with Mark was, of course, completely and irrevocably over. He tried to contact me a few times, emails, texts, even a tearful voicemail, begging for forgiveness, for a second chance. But I ignored them all, deleting his messages, blocking his number, erasing him from my life as completely as possible. There was no forgiveness, no second chance. The trust was broken, shattered beyond repair, and I had no desire to revisit the pain, to reopen the wounds. My relationship with Clara was more complicated, more nuanced, more painful. In the immediate aftermath of the party, we didn't speak. The silence between us was thick, heavy, suffocating. My parents tried to mediate, to encourage reconciliation, but the chasm between us felt too wide, too deep. Eventually, Clara sent me a letter, a long, rambling, tear-stained confession, expressing her remorse, her shame, her desperate desire for forgiveness. She admitted everything: the stolen glances, the secret meetings, the gradual slide into an affair she claimed she never intended. She blamed herself. She blamed Mark. She blamed the circumstances. Anything but the fundamental betrayal of our sisterhood. I read the letter, tears streaming down my face. Not tears of anger or pain, but tears of sadness, of loss, of grief. for the sister I had lost, for the bond that had been broken. I didn't reply. Not immediately. I needed time to process, time to heal, time to decide if forgiveness was even possible, or if the betrayal was too deep, too damaging to ever overcome. Life went on, as it always does, even in the face of heartbreak and betrayal. I went to work, I saw my friends, I went through the motions of daily life, but everything felt different, muted, less vibrant. The world seemed a little grayer, a little colder, a little less hopeful. I started therapy, seeking professional help to navigate the emotional wreckage of the affair, to process my anger, my sadness, my loss of trust. Therapy helped, slowly, gradually, to untangle the knots of my emotions, to make sense of the senseless, to find a path forward, however uncertain and daunting it may be. I started to rebuild my life piece by piece, day by day. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks, relapses, moments of despair when I felt like I would never fully heal, never fully trust again. But I persevered, driven by an inner resilience, a determination to not let betrayal define me, to not let anger consume me, to not let loss break me. Slowly, gradually, the pain began to lessen, the emptiness began to fill, the grayness began to fade. The scars remained, of course, a permanent reminder of the betrayal, but they no longer throbbed with raw pain. They became a part of me, a testament to my resilience, my strength, my ability to survive even the deepest wounds. The storm had passed. The sun began to peek through the clouds, and I started to see, however faintly, a glimmer of hope, a possibility of healing, a chance for a new beginning. The birthday party was a distant memory, a painful chapter in my life, but a chapter that was finally, slowly, coming to a close. Months turned into a year. The sharp edges of the pain had softened. The raw wound had begun to scar over. I had moved on, in many ways. I had focused on myself, on my healing, on rebuilding my life. I had changed jobs, moved apartments, started new hobbies, surrounded myself with supportive friends, created a new routine, a new identity, separate from the wreckage of my past. I was stronger, more independent, more self-reliant. The betrayal had broken me, yes, but it had also forged me anew, tempered me in the fires of heartbreak and loss. I was no longer the naive, trusting girl who had been so easily blindsided. I was a survivor, a warrior, a woman who had faced the darkness and emerged, scarred but unbroken, into the light. My relationship with Clara remained strained, distant, fragile. We had exchanged a few emails, a few polite phone calls, mostly initiated by my parents, attempts to bridge the gap, to mend the broken bond. But the connection was gone, the intimacy lost, replaced by a wary politeness, a forced formality. The sisterhood we had once shared felt like a distant dream, a faded photograph, a memory tinged with sadness and regret. I didn't hate Clara. Anger had long since given way to a weary resignation, a quiet acceptance of the irreparable damage. I pitied her, in a way. She had lost me, lost our bond, lost the trust and love that had been so freely given, so carelessly betrayed. She had to live with the consequences of her actions, the shame, the guilt, the knowledge of what she had done. That was punishment enough. I had chosen to forgive, not for her sake, but for my own. Holding on to anger and resentment would only poison me, keep me trapped in the past, prevent me from moving forward. Forgiveness was not forgetting, not condoning, not excusing. It was releasing myself from the burden of bitterness, freeing myself to heal, to grow, to find peace. Mark had disappeared from my life completely, a ghost of a past relationship, a painful reminder of betrayal and heartbreak. I heard through mutual friends that he had moved to another city, started a new job, a new life. I didn't care. He was irrelevant to me now. A footnote in my story, a lesson learned, a mistake I wouldn't repeat. I had learned to trust my instincts, to listen to my intuition, to recognize the red flags I had ignored before. I had learned the importance of self-respect, of setting boundaries, of prioritizing my own well-being. I was still single, still hesitant to open my heart again, still wary of vulnerability and trust. But I was no longer afraid. I knew I could survive heartbreak. I knew I could overcome betrayal. I knew I could rebuild my life stronger and more resilient than before. The birthday party, the exposure, the aftermath. It was all part of my journey, a painful but necessary chapter in my story. It had changed me, irrevocably, but not for the worse. It had made me stronger, wiser, more compassionate, more appreciative of the true bonds of love and loyalty. The storm had passed, the clouds had parted, and the sun was shining, not brightly, not intensely, but gently, warmly, promising a new day, a new beginning, a new hope.